Okay, everybody, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody. Bienvenidos. My name is Adam Race, coming to you live from Mexico City, Mexico. And to prove that, I'm not sure if the microphone is picking this up, but I've got right now some street noise. It's rainy out there. But I've got a fruit truck guy coming alongside here at his usual hour, which is also bad timing for a Facebook webinar. Mexico can be noisy at times, so it is what it is. One of its charms, essentially. So again, thank you, everybody. Bienvenidos. Buenas tardes or buenas noches, depends on where you are. I'll talk briefly about myself and how I came to be living here in Mexico. Again, my name is Adam Race. I'm an American, if you can't tell from my accent. Born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's kind of the easy answer. But more recently, before moving abroad, living in Denver, Colorado. But I've lived all over the country, other countries as well. But my first time coming to Mexico, I was a young 18-year-old man, ex-military, ex-Navy. So I was stationed in San Diego, California, going to school out there. And then I would cross the border to go to Tijuana, of course. Have some drinks, have a little fun, as one does, young and dumb. But I remember my first time crossing the border and it's like being in wow, and kind of like the cosmopolitan of the country. This all the senses, excuse me, sight, sounds, all the people in the streets and everything. Me growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, Tijuana was such a very different place to be. It's kind of chaotic, a lot going on out there, but I remember like, wow, pretty cool place and everything. And I remember eating some tacos al pastor. It used to be 3 for $1. This is back in the year 2000. And yeah, just loving the food, loving the experience, loving everything about Mexico and everything. And I think really like fell in love at that point with Mexico. And then throughout the years, I had come and gone into Mexico for vacations. I did have like a longer 6-month trip, backpacker in between schools and everything, a little bit later in life, and traveled throughout Mexico. Went to Guadalajara, Merida, the Cancun, Quintana Roo side and everything. Saw all the ruins, ate all the great food, met a lot of great people and everything. It was such an amazing experience. And I think probably at that moment as well, I fell in love with the country. It's a big, big country, a lot to offer, a lot to see. And the reason why I live here today. But I actually ended up here in Mexico a bit by accident, if you will. 6 years ago now, I decided to live abroad. So I moved to Lima, Peru. Was kind of my first choice, but it was actually a bit like the wrong choice. But neither here nor there. I definitely had a good time out there. But I ended up coming to Mexico City with a prior girlfriend and everything. She was Mexican Peruvian, and she wanted to move back to Mexico where she grew up and everything. And then we decided to come together and everything. And I've since stayed here and everything. I've been here almost 4 years now. I love Mexico. I love Mexico City. Personally, it's the best choice for me here and everything. I love it so much. I've built a business around Mexico and helping other foreigners or other expats, as we commonly call ourselves, to help them also realize the dreams that they may have to move to Mexico. That's really kind of the impetus of why I started Into Mexico We Go, to help people avoid those same struggles. To get in the visa. Where do I live? How do I get my stuff down there? Can I bring my dog? A lot of questions when you're essentially starting over, as you are in a new country. Especially if you don't know anybody, don't speak the language, right? That's a big, big issue or a hurdle, potentially. But my goal for Into Mexico We Go is help aspiring and current expats navigate the process of moving to, living in, and exploring this amazing, amazing country of Mexico with practical guides, curated information, and honest insights. So I'm going to dive right into this. And I did put up a poll. I did have a bunch of responses, so I will go in order of importance. So we're going to cover visas and residency, healthcare, cost of living, location of housing, and then safety. So let's get to it for visas and residency. So I've got 5 different visa types, essentially, or classifications or groupings that you could potentially qualify for. So the first one is under like a financial requirements for temporary or permanent visas. Next one is a work visa. You get an employer to sponsor your work visa, right? The third one being a student visa. Fourth one being family unity or marriage visa. And the last one is citizenship or heritage. So I'm going to dive right into it. So first one up is temporary residency visa. So this is up to, if you're going over 6 months, if you're an American, Canadian, I presume as well, we are allowed up to 6 months on a tourist visa. But if you want to stay over 6 months, legally, right, need a visa, a residency. So for the temporary, again, it is up more than 6 months or up to 4 years. And that is renewable as well. Generally, you are given like a 1-year temporary residency where you need to actually renew it before the year is over, right? So about a month before. And it's often used as like a trial run in Mexico, right? People don't know if they're gonna like it. Living in a foreign country, foreign place, is it for me? I don't know, right? You know, a lot of doubts in your minds that do come up to all of us. So a temporary visa potentially could be a good trial run, you know, in that first year to see if you like it. So, excuse me. And this later can be converted to a permanent visa after 4 years. So the way you qualify for the temporary, you'll need one, and there's 3 different ways, but one of the 3 will qualify you. First one being income, so your salary and whatnot, and starting August 1st of this year, it's $4,145 US dollars. And you need to have that for 6 months at a time prior to. So 6 months before that, showing, you know, essentially that you've been making that steady income of 45 USD sustainably and everything. The second way to qualify is through savings. So the full number, the rule number is $69,859 or $70,000 to make it easy, right? And for that, you need up to have it in your accounts for 12 months on average for that. And the third way you can qualify is if you own property, like a house or apartment, in Mexico. And there's actually a number, a value attached to that they need to be able to demonstrate and show. And that number is a house or an apartment of 10,363,000 Mexican pesos. Sounds like a big number. The word 10 million sounds pretty scary, you know, of course, but to throw that into USD terms, current rate today I checked is 564,000 US dollars. You know, it's not 10 million, you know, right? Pesos and dollars, but $564,000 USD of a house or an apartment's valued in Mexico. So you'll need one of those 3 to demonstrate through paperwork, right? You need to show the consulates that you've got that number or more. More is better, of course. Demonstratable when you go to your visa appointments. So the next one, permanent residency. It's an indefinite stay. The word permanent, right? It means permanent. No renewals required. Some qualify directly. Things like pensions. We've got a big number of pension. I'll show you the number here in seconds. Good to go, essentially, hopefully. And to qualify, you'll need one of the 2. So for the pension, For the permanent, the number is 6,949. So you can call that 7,000 USD dollars. Again, this is the last 6 months as well, just like the other one, temporary. So $7,000 demonstratable within some kind of paperwork, probably government or something, more likely. A pension to show that. The second way is savings. So the number is 279,000 USD, and I rounded to this, for the last 12 months on average. So you need to have one of those two, 7,000 USD or $279,000 in your accounts to show. And with this, it's kind of tricky. Sometimes the consulates ask for, sometimes they want to see it like in a cash, like a checking account or savings account, like in a bank. Other times, like in investments, stocks are okay. Crypto probably is not going to be okay. You know, it's got wild swings of value and everything. But like the closer you are to cash, the better off you are generally. And then also too, I'll say this a little bit later as well, where some of the consulates allow or disallow various like investment types, which sounds crazy. Probably shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is, unfortunately. And it just, it makes life a little bit harder to apply for a visa, but I'll talk more about that here in a second. So, so that's the temporary and the permanent visa. So the next one is the work visa. So that basically is you get hired by a Mexican company, right? And then they've given you a job offer. And then essentially that company has already registered with immigration or INM. And then essentially from there, you just apply for the work visa. I know there are thousands or maybe millions, I'm not sure, of other citizens that do work here in Mexico. I meet them all the time. All kind of different Latinos or Spanish or Americans, right? I've got American friends that work here at some Mexican companies and everything. So that is a possibility. And then I will say with the work visa, this is a bit of your if you don't qualify for anything else, the other visas that I'm going to talk about, potentially a work visa you could actually qualify for. But I'll tell you, it's a bit of so basically what it is, you start your own company. So you start your own company, and then you take that company to immigration, as I mentioned before, INM, and then you ask for permission to hire a foreigner, just like any other company would. And then as long as they grant you permission, you hire yourself. You issue yourself a work visa. Sounds crazy, but it's very possible. So if these other visa types don't allow you to live in Mexico and you really want to live in Mexico, essentially you could start your own business. It could be simple as like a pizza restaurant, consulting, car repair, you name it. A legal entity business here in Mexico. And then as long as you get authorization, again, through immigration, you can hire yourself. Why? It's your company. You're the owner, right? You're going to hire yourself. And then it's legal, 100% legal. It is possible. People do it and everything. But that is one kind of a extra or kind of a workaround, if you will, if you want to start your own business. So, FYI. The next category of visa that we have is student visa. Pretty simple, right? If you want to go to study, college, or whatever, it's generally a college level and above. Excuse me. You can get a student visa. And essentially that university needs to be an accredited Mexican institution. So we're talking like a real university. We're talking like 6 months or longer. And then also, this is kind of a common question that I get, excuse me, is like private Spanish classes or schools. Generally, 95% will not qualify you, unfortunately. I've tried that right before in the past. Personally, it doesn't work. Why? Because you need to have a longer stay, and then also They need to be, again, an accredited Mexican institution. Excuse me. And with this, you do need to qualify for one of the three. There's a bit of a financial requirement as well, but very small, very doable, I think, for most people. One of the three is monthly supports of 655 USD within like the last 3 months. Then number two, way to qualify under the student visa is savings. So you need to have a 3-month average of $10,920, so call it $11,000, right? And the third way, parental support. So generally, right, if you're college age, 18 to 20 or something, 22, they may support you, potentially. And then essentially the number for this is $10,400 a month that your parents need to show that demonstrates, along with the letter from the college and everything to qualify for the student visa. So the next category for visas, got 2 more left: family unity and marriage. So basically, it's you marry a Mexican citizen, right? You can use them to get a visa here in Mexico. So you apply along with them and everything. Or if you have children, if your kids were Mexican citizens born here or whatever, you can apply under them and everything to get you a Mexican visa. And there's no financial requirements for this family unity or marriage visa. And then generally you start at a temporary, but after 2 years you can switch to permanent if married. So the last category we have is citizenship or heritage. So if your parents or your abuelos, right, are Mexican, and maybe you were born in a different country, we'll say the U.S., right, in easy example. For example, if your abuelos, your grandparents, right, were Mexican, they came over to the U.S., whatever, back in the day, maybe had kids in the U.S. who are now American, but they never got their Mexican citizenship. But you, the next level down, right, are American, but you're not Mexican. So essentially, your parents, because from your grandparents down, you need to draw a straight line of Mexican citizenship. So if your grandparents are Mexican, came over, had kids, your parents need to get Mexican citizenship before you can get it. So it's a straight down lineage, down the generations and everything before you, if you're 2 down from Mexican citizens, to qualify to get your Mexican passports. It's not really a visa, right? It's a passport, which is a golden visa or your golden ticket, if you will, to live in Mexico. So essentially, you don't need a visa, right? You got a passport and you are a full citizen, 100%, you vote and everything, and you're good to go. So how do you apply? So once you figure out which category you potentially could qualify for the visa or the residency, where do you go, right? A lot of people maybe come to Mexico, figure it out on a tourist visa, and then want to get a visa from Mexico. Can't do that. So you have to go back to your home country. So essentially, right, there's a whole bunch of consulates. If you're American like myself, a whole bunch of Mexican consulates all over the country that you can apply for. And then essentially it's, you talk to them, you get a whole bunch of information, and then you start the process, right? But the one thing I do want to point out, I almost forgot. So out of the 5 different types, only the family unity or marriage can you actually apply when you're in Mexico. So everything else outside of Mexico, you can't apply here in Mexico. So some information about Mexican consulates here. I was reviewing some of my notes here, a lot to cover. So there is a difference between consulates, as I mentioned before. So you would think, logically, you would think how there's a whole bunch of consulates, they're governments, right? Entities, they should be all the same, but they're not, unfortunately. So essentially what you can do, if you don't like your response or you get denied at one consulate, you can technically consulate shop, So if you go to Phoenix, for example, you're denied and you actually qualify, you qualified on paper because the numbers say this and you make this or whatever on financials. You can go to a different consulate to try again. So far, that has been successful for some people, if you want to. Sometimes consulates now are saying like locals only. So essentially, you need to show your driver's license or proof of address. If you're local, right, you can get in the queue or the line to get a visa or apply for a visa. But if you're not local, they may not let you apply. But that's not all consulates. So kind of the name of the game is be patient. There's a lot going on. The consulates may give you different answers. It's frustrating. In some way, that's kind of like life living here in Mexico. Good or bad, that's the way it is. But be patient, and as long as you're especially qualify, you qualify. Hopefully, you can get a Mexican visa. So, sometimes consulates ask for a wet signature from financial institutions. So back to the temporary and permanent, you got to show financials, right? So your savings or your salary. Sometimes they want to see, or even like a certified letter from your boss or something, or Wells Fargo or whatever, wherever your money is, which is a bit tricky. For us Americans, generally you just go online, print off a PDF or download whatever, and there's no official letterhead and some vice president to sign the bottom on blue ink kind of a thing. That it's not like a thing anymore, right? But sometimes you gotta find a way to do it. Not easy. It's frustrating, but my biggest tip probably is to definitely ask questions to your consulate that you're applying to, like specifics, like very specifically on what they need, how they need it, number of copies, do you need a wet signature or not? I mean, the more information you get, if you get information, that's kind of the other thing, the better off and the higher your chances will be of getting a Mexican residency visa. So, excuse me, throat's a little dry here. Other tips. So again, be prepared. All paperwork, more copies are better. Sorry, trees. Be patient. So right now there is a high influx of applicants. Crazy world out there. A lot of people want to come to Mexico. So essentially, I've heard consulates sometimes are backed up for months. So it's hit or miss. If you're probably in a bigger city, probably a bigger line. That's the way it works, right? More people, longer line. Be patient. I would say speak Spanish. So, ¿tú hablas español? Hazlo, no? Practice. Walk into your visa interview. If you speak Spanish or not, speak what you can. I feel like that goes a long way to show respect. Show that, one, you speak Spanish, because that's a very common complaint that people have sometimes here in Mexico, that Americans especially, other foreigners too, don't speak Spanish. So minimally, buenos dias, ¿cómo estás? Kind of a thing when you're in the interview. The more you speak, the better. The more you're going to connect with that person, and the higher your chances will be to get that visa. Last tip I will say is, when you go to the visa interview, is to dress professionally. Minimally dress casual. We're talking for a guy slacks and a button-down shirt. Probably no board shorts. I've heard people walking into shorts, tank top, flip-flops or something. Personally, I think that's a bad idea. Yeah, maybe it's my ex-military or something, but just being able to look professional. you're going into a professional environment, asking to go live in someone else's country. You should look, better than average, essentially, and that means casual business attire is my personal opinion. I'll tell you about my experience getting a visa. This is about 3 years ago now, over 3 years ago now. Excuse me. So I did mine in Denver, as I mentioned before. Most previously lived in the U.S. In Denver. So luckily, big city. There's a consulate there, very nearby. So I applied in, I think, about March of 2022, and essentially, the information on the website's generally like not up to date or something, or there's a phone number or an email. They don't reply, or they reply very slowly, which for us is very frustrating, right? You're like, oof, come on. Just trying to get information or get a reply back. It's kind of like being ghosted, which is uncomfortable, right? So I waited, I think about a good month or so before I actually heard back. And then essentially I got an appointment about 2 months later in June in Denver. So they gave me dates. I said, sounds good to me. So I was actually living in Mexico City, and I had to fly back for that date. And it was kind of actually pretty easy. I felt like a bit lucky. No kind of crazy story to talk about. Probably be good for a webinar like this, but unfortunately, it was pretty cut and dry. I came prepared. I speak decent enough Spanish. This is actually my second time applying for residency in a Spanish-speaking country, the other being Peru a couple of years prior. So I didn't actually use anybody. I didn't use any visa facilitator or anything. And yeah, I just applied. I made sure I went through there. Read a whole bunch of information online to figure out what I need, what to watch out for, kind of a thing. And so my appointment was at noon in June. And essentially, I made sure I had all my copies. So bring more copies on any kind of government paperwork stuff you have to do. That's a very big tip, I feel like, living in Mexico and other Latin countries too as well. Bring more copies, and I arrived 30 minutes before my appointments in the parking lot, make sure I didn't have any problems, right? And then walked in about 15 minutes or so before my scheduled time. And then it was basically, walk in, I had the email appointments printed out. Printed is always better. Or both, electronic as well. To show the guy, hey, I'm here for a visa appointment, right? There's a whole bunch of chairs and groups of people and lines waiting and everything, doing various things, right? And the guy said, okay, sit over there, wait for, your time to be called up. And then right on the dot, noon on the dot, called up. I was told to put in to a different group of chairs off to the different part of the consulate. And waited there 15 minutes or so. And then eventually kind of a young guy came out, here comes the police, called my name, Adam Rice. I went right up, had all the paperwork ready to go, right? And essentially, I spoke Spanish, right? Hola, buenas tardes, how's it going and everything, right? Again, I feel like that's, helps. He took my paperwork, reviewed it and everything, said, okay, sit back down. And about 10 minutes later or so, he came back out from the back, called me back to his back office, went back there, had a conversation in Spanish, asked him where he's from. He asked some questions, what's my intention of living in Mexico? Have I been there before? Luckily I've been there maybe 10 times before or something, including, as I mentioned before, that 6-month trip. I could name off some cities and some food and everything. And essentially, easygoing, approved it, said, yeah, you're good to go, kind of a thing. And then I told me to come back in about 2 hours. So I went and grabbed some lunch nearby, came on back, right? And then eventually, he came back out, the young gentleman. from the back, and then said, yeah, good to go. Gave me my passports with the visa in there. I paid the money, $53 USD at the cashier lady thing. And then I had my Mexican visa. I mean, it was seemed a little too easy, to be honest, but I thought I was prepared. And yeah, no issues at all, but other people sometimes do have issues. I've even heard stories about people who qualify on paper. They're well over the financials, for example, the temporary I mentioned of 4,145 USD being denied. You never know. Right? You never know if somebody has a bad day, they don't like your bald head or something, right? You don't know. And it is up to the visa processor's job is to qualify you or not, right? So making sure you have your ducks in a row is super important. Be respectful, again, speaking Spanish really, really helps, I feel like. So, okay, that is visas. And we're going to move on to healthcare. My voice is cracking. Excuse me. Healthcare and insurance here. So, I will say it's probably the hardest section to talk about because why? Everybody has different healthcare needs in situations, right? Anybody watching this right here, right now, has different situations again as I do, so it's hard to know what everybody needs and type of care, chronic conditions or whatever it may be. But I'll talk about like what I do and what I think is successful. I'll give you some prices on some easy stuff. Also some other information about other options that you could take when you're living here in Mexico. So, so for me, myself, I'm a 43-year-old male. I think I'm fairly healthy. I don't use doctor visits all that much, thankfully. Hopefully, keep that going. But personally, what I do, because I'm a U.S. veteran, as I mentioned before, Navy before, I do have access to VA healthcare, which is, I realize most people don't. But essentially, whenever I'm back in the U.S., I do access sometimes some VA healthcare, some blood work or whatever, or if I can wait, there's something, pain here or whatever, I wait till I'm back in Denver to take care of that healthcare need, essentially. And I think that could actually work for a lot of, say, senior citizens as well, who are on like Medicare, for example, that do have, government health insurance. And as long as they can wait, they can, or fly back if they need to, right? To address the situation, without having to spend money here in Mexico. But the other way, I do use healthcare here, is that I do pay out of pockets. So I feel like it's pretty reasonable, especially if you're an American like myself. Healthcare is very expensive, right? Super expensive, ridiculously expensive. That's a different topic for webinar. I'm not an expert in that by any means. But so a lot of out-of-pocket stuff I do pay for. It's, to be honest, not that big of a deal, I feel like, but I'll throw some numbers at you in Mexican pesos and US dollars. For example, teeth cleaning, right? A couple times a year, get your teeth cleaned, regular dentist. So I pay 600 Mexican pesos. So that is, in today's dollars, $33. And that's also a dentist who doesn't speak any English. And that's probably pretty key as well, where if you find somebody, especially like healthcare, that speaks English, you're probably going to pay more. That's the way it works, right? So like a specialist doctor, I went to like a dermatologist one time. I think it was 1,200 pesos, which you can do easy math off the teeth cleaning, double 600. So that was 66 USD. And essentially, I want to go do a dermatologist, right? And I just looked up online, found one, good reviews and everything, and I just made the appointment myself. I didn't need to go to a primary care doctor. That's like a common thing in the U.S. I just called this doctor up or emailed, made an appointment, showed up, paid. Great service, great care, and I paid out of pocket, kind of a thing. So Like drugs, for example, or excuse me, medicines, RX drugs. For example, antibiotics. Had some stomach issues, right? Antibiotics. 120 Mexican pesos for a 2 week thing or whatever. And that was 655 USD, so $6.55 for some prescription drugs, right? I think it's a pretty good deal. I'm not sure what the prices are in the US, to be honest. Again, I'm not a healthcare expert. But generally, I feel like it depends. Bigger stuff, maybe not so much cheap wise, but a lot of the stuff, especially if you need like once in a while healthcare. Also, if you can afford it as well, that's a big thing. Paying out of pocket is actually not a bad option. Way cheaper, equally good healthcare, or better sometimes, to be honest, than the U.S. I'll say like dentists, for example. Back in the U.S., the dentist I had before were not that great, to be honest. I'm not sure why, but here in Mexico, great dentists for pretty cheap. After seeing the U.S. and everything. So a lot of options here. The healthcare is fantastic. So the third way I do manage my healthcare personally is, accidents do happen. I'm not getting younger, right? As I age, and we all age, things start to break, unfortunately, or the more time, whatever, driving a car or something, the more likely you are to be in an accident, right? That's obvious. So I do have a catastrophic emergency health insurance, to cover something major again. And this is kind of the reason why is because some hospitals, if you show up in an ambulance or something, or show up bleeding or arm broken or something, they want proof of funds, essentially. They want to know that they're going to get paid. I'll just say it, directly. Where, like in the U.S., for Americans, you show up to a hospital, legally they have to attend to you. That's law and everything. Whether you can prove you can pay for it or not. But here in Mexico, not the same. So you may, well, one, insurance is the best, right? Especially you give your card and everything. Or a credit card. You may need to give a credit card, which they're going to charge you deposits as well to make sure they can cover the funds because they want to get paid. So essentially, this catastrophic or emergency health care that I have is just for that, right? If I end up in a hospital unexpectedly, or if I'm knocked out cold, then it's there. So those three, again, I kind of review these. I go back to the U.S., access what healthcare I can. I pay out of pockets. And then the third one is emergency healthcare that I do use, that I could use here if I need to. And for me, that works just well. That may change in 5-10 years as I age or something pops up. But for me, currently, it works. So. So Medicare. So Medicare is a big concern amongst a lot of Americans, right? A lot of elderly folks do ask me, does Medicare work, right? So I've got a cheat sheet here. I'm not a Medicare expert, but I do have some information for you. So what Medicare covers and does not cover abroad. Medicare Parts A and B, no coverage outside the U.S. and its territories, except in rare emergencies. Like if you're in the U.S. and the nearest hospital is across the border. Medicare Advantage Part C. Some plans offer limited emergency coverage abroad, but not regular doctor visits or long-term care. It depends on the private insurer as well. Medigap plans C, D, F, G, M, and M. That's a whole lot of plans. Some Medigap supplemental plans reimburse up to 80% of emergency medical care abroad, with strict caps, usually $50,000 lifetime max. with a deductible of $250 for the first 60 days of travel. This is generally for short-term travel, not living abroad full-time. That's a mouthful. So yeah, Medicare is not going to be an option, essentially, more or less here in Mexico. So what you could do, like I do, as I said before, when I'm back in the U.S., I do some healthcare back there. If I'm able to wait, get your annual, physical or whatever it may be, kind of dip in and out of both healthcare systems. So some other options, there's a whole bunch. So you can get, private healthcare insurance here in Mexico. There's a bazillion different options. I've seen people get like medevac insurance, right? If you're high risk, if you think you can get better care for some kind of a rare condition or whatever back in your home country, maybe the US, there are certain companies that you can pay for and they will fly you back on a private jet. If you're out in a stretcher or something or unconscious, that's an option. Or there are some public options here as well in Mexico. So the first one is IMSS, IMSS. So this is the Instituto Mexicano del Seguro Social. So essentially it's socialized medicine here in Mexico that a lot of people do use. Millions of Mexicans do use this, and also foreigners as well. So it's originally for workers with formal jobs, but essentially you as a foreigner, as an expat with legal status here, residency in Mexico, you can opt in to this healthcare system, but it costs because you've not paid taxes before, I assume, right? So if you're like me. And this thing essentially is based on age. You gotta qualify like health insurance. And then you give it a number, and I'll give you an example here in a second. Essentially it covers doctor's visits, hospital care, prescriptions, surgeries, and some chronic conditions. Some of the drawbacks can be clinics are crowded, waits can be long, the quality of the health care varies, right? But costs are generally low. And some kind of pretty obvious, but maybe not obvious, some people, essentially if you're in a big city, right? I mean, there's more people, there's more healthcare generally. You've got better quality doctors probably, if you're in a small pueblito, right? But when you see a specialist or something about something, probably not going to have a specialist. You have to go to a big city, right? But it can vary. But I would say generally, I've heard positive things. I personally have not accessed the IMSS healthcare option yet. I may in the future. But I've heard pretty good things. You get 10 different people, 10 different opinions, but I would say overwhelmingly decent quality. So it's definitely worth checking into. So an example here for costs. So essentially is for a 60-year-old, 60. If you want to get into the annual fee for this is 19,800 pesos a year. And if you can't do some quick math in your head, like me, $1,000, so $1,080 to get into the IMSS system, healthcare. And essentially, it's free or free-ish, essentially at that point. So, not a bad deal, I would say. It depends, maybe not for you. I'm not sure, but it could be a good option for you once you get residency status. Moving along here, I'm chatty. Another type of healthcare that may work, kind of. So it's INSABI, Instituto de Salud para el Bienestar. So essentially, this is kind of like the Medicare, low income people here in Mexico. Foreigners generally are not allowed in this program, but there are certain cases like an emergency where you could, if bleeding out your head or whatever, you could access, you walk into the emergency room and they may see you. So that is one other option of healthcare, maybe, in emergencies. So Okay. Last part about this, healthcare. So how do you find an English-speaking doctor? And I say English because if you don't speak any Spanish, probably want to know what they're saying to you because health is important, obviously. So references, right? That's a big key. Ask your friend, ask someone who's been here for a while, or ask in my Into Mexico We Go Facebook group. Yay. Or there's a good website that I personally use. I love it. Doctoralia. So doctor with ALIA.com. So it's a great website. You can put in your specialist you want, close to you, 5 miles away, speaks English or not, all these like filters and everything. There's like reviews, 4.8 stars kind of a thing. You can read people's reviews like Uber or whatever. Not like Uber, but like a Google Maps restaurants. And then pick your doctor that way. And I found great success from this website, and I personally use this as well. So, and it's all over the country. Next section, cost of living. So much like healthcare, pretty difficult. This is kind of actually, we all have different like standards of living or how we want to live. It's very subjective. It's. Do you have kids, right? Do you have a wife? Do you have 5 dogs? Whatever it may be. It's not an easy topic. I can give you exact answers, but I can give you some examples on cost and then also why they may cost more. So for me, personally, like I live pretty simply. I don't have a car. I got apartments. I love riding around Mexico City in a bicycle. Get your exercise. You actually arrive there faster in a lot of ways than traffic, like peak hour. Or metro. I use metro, Uber, or bus, or a friend's car. Many different ways to get around the city, so that's it's really lowest cost for me personally. But some rules I have, to kind of share with you all is if you live in a foreigner-heavy city, we're talking Puerto Vallarta, Tulum, expensive. Cancun, that whole area right over there. San Miguel de Allende. Mexico City as well. Certain neighborhoods are not cheap. Generally your costs are going to go up. The more foreigners you see, the more English you hear. The more English menus on restaurants you see. Costs are going to go up. Hands down, 100%. That's the way it works. If you only speak English, again, same kind of rule. You're gonna get charged more. There's something called the gringo tax. It happens. That's the way it works. You're not a local, you may get charged more. You go to mercados, right? Try to buy your food or whatever. They hear in accents. They may, not always. Doesn't always happen. No. You may get some inflated prices. Or English, right? You only speak English, prices are going to go up, unfortunately. Why? Because a lot of times people think that you come from a rich country, whether that's true or not, that you have money, whether that's, again, true or not as well. So they're going to, again, inflate prices, maybe, not always. So for costs, I personally think from like a U.S. perspective, and it's kind of living in Denver most recently, which is like a second tier city. It's not cheap, but it's not New York City and not San Francisco, right? Costs are about 30 to 50% cheaper. Or really could be up to like 80% cheaper if you really want to go live in like a small pueblito or something, where like the supermarkets only sells like limited products. We're talking like 2 different types of milk, bags of rice, what is it, like the cereal or something, 1 or 2 options, very, less foreign products essentially. You get really cheap. You want to go off the grid or something, you can get super, super cheap. But if you want to, live in a foreigner heavy place, where there's Costco, Costco's around here now, there's IKEA, there's Chili's, there's, of course, McDonald's, of course. A lot of Western businesses and everything. Prices, going to go up, essentially. So Some examples that I pay here personally in Mexico City. So cell phones, I've got Telcel, which is the biggest which is the biggest carrier here in Mexico. Fantastic, no issues generally speaking. I pay 400 Mexican pesos a month. That's for a contract, a 2-year contract. So that's 22 US dollars that I pay a month. You can get more, right? You can get cheaper as well. Some people pay like pay as they go kind of a thing where they pay like 100 pesos. They walk into an OXXO, like a 7-Eleven store called OXXO. Pay, as you go, 50 or 100 or whatever. And if they run out, they just go walk to a store and they pay. Personally, I like having the contract and everything. 422 bucks fits in my budget, right? So definitely doable. Food costs, this is hard. Food costs have been increasing, I think worldwide, I would say, but here in Mexico as well. I mean, I gave a rough number. I've got really no idea, to be honest, on the full number. But like 6,000 Mexican pesos, so $327 just for me. No kids. Transportation cost, again, I have no car. Metro's 5 pesos, 25 cents, USD. Occasional Uber, across town or something, or I'm feeling lazy or I'm running late. Get an Uber for 150 pesos, $4, $5. So I put 300 pesos. Could vary month to month. 16 US dollars. Housing. It varies widely as well. I mean, you go all the way down to a couple thousand pesos in a pueblito or something. I put like 10,000 to 45,000 Mexican pesos. Could go more. I mean, it depends on what your budget is. So, and 10,000 is $550. Up to 45,000 pesos is 2,500 USD. Varies. So gas. So I do pay for gas, not for my car, but here for the water heater and the stove. About 500 Mexican pesos a month, $27, not too bad. Internet and cable, 600. I've got Total Play, it's called the company, 600 pesos, $32 up to 1,000. You get your fast megas and all the premium channels or whatever, up to $55 approximately. So again, very rough numbers. It's super hard to give you like, how much does it cost to live in Mexico? I've got no idea how you personally live, if you're out eating every day or whatever, you got your car. I mean, you live on the beach, got the view, whatever. Hard to tell, but generally, again, to kind of give you the number again, like 30 to 50% cheaper potentially than the US, if it's my frame of reference that I use. So almost done here. So location of housing, this was added in by Brian Reeves. So thank you, Brian Reeves, for adding this in here. Great question. So what I assume this means is like, how do you find out where you want to live is what I read this as. I think for me, you have to be really honest, on what kind of place you want to live. Like I've lived all over the world, literally in all different types of environments, weather conditions and everything. I mean, for example, for me, like I would love to have the ability to like live on the beach. Mexico has probably the best beaches in the world, I feel like. But I just can't do the hot and humid. I can do it for a couple of weeks or something, or maybe in like the non-summer months. But for me, the hot and humid, I'm very uncomfortable. So I just can't do the beach. Things like considerations like living or being around other foreigners. Do you feel more comfortable being around other foreigners? Do you want your community, your circle to be, another American, Canadian, Aussies, whatever maybe, or not? Do you want to get the full immersion experience in New Mexico, only speak Spanish? Probably shouldn't live or hang out, I guess, potentially, in some of these foreigner-heavy places, right? Budget concerns, pretty obvious, right? For example, Tulum is pretty expensive. If you can't afford it, probably shouldn't live there, right? do you want to live more like a local? Again, there's Mexico's a big, big country. You can definitely get whatever you want here. You have to be really honest with what you want. So, for me, to give you an example, like I love actually living in Mexico City. It has like great weather, very sunny, even though we're in the rainy season right now, which means rainy at like 5 o'clock maybe. Drier climate, I like that. Bigger city, always something to do. Festivals and museums, restaurants, super cool places that I've never been. There's infinite possibilities, right? But then also for me, I love hiking mountains. So not many people know this, but there's actually some great hiking around here. Some big volcanoes and mountains, hour or two away. So I get my weekend hiking in and everything that I love. But that's not for everybody. Some people need the beach. There's infinite possibilities here in Mexico that you could live, or desert or something. I mean, just being honest on what you want, what you like, and just go try different places. My biggest tip is to spend as much time in your target's city. If you can. I know it's not possible for everybody, but essentially whatever you're working from home or something, or take a vacation, or you're retired, easier. Go spend at least a few weeks, in Puerto Vallarta or Puebla or Cancun or whatever, or months. Try it out. Try the pants on, try the car or whatever, example you want to give. Before you buy, especially you buy a place, buy a house or an apartment, at least, 6 months or a year. But go try it out, for as long as possible. See if it feels right. See if the energy is right. If the people, if you like it, if the weather is good. I mean, all these factors, or certain times of the year. I mean, like Merida, for example, in the Yucatan, which is near Cancun, it's hot. It's like one of the hottest places in Mexico. I stayed a month there in July. I suffered. I didn't have AC. I suffered, but July not the same as like December, for example. So all these factors, try them out, I would say. So last topic. Safety in Mexico. So it's actually the number one question that I get, even though it's scored kind of low here, which means everybody who did give a response on the poll probably knows the deal in Mexico. Safety is a big concern. But I think generally Mexico is very much like the US, more or less, in levels of safety. To be honest, I feel perfectly safe here in Mexico, and also Mexico City. And essentially what I do, I mean, like, I treat it like the US, where it's in a city. I mean, any city, if there's the good parts you go to, there's the bad parts you probably shouldn't ever go to, or if it's nighttime, you should probably get out, right? Or just drive through or something. Same thing here, especially Mexico City or other cities as well, where just, treat it like that. Some tips, I would say, I mean, like, general street smarts apply. I mean, that seems common, but sometimes people don't abide by that. Keeping a low profile. I mean, if you don't fit in or something, you may be looked at, some extra looks, or they hear you speak, like me with an accent, kind of a double take or something. No flashy jewelry. I would say it's like a Latin America rule all down South America. Expensive watches, jewelry. I had a friend tell me recently, a Mexican friend, in Polanco. So Polanco is like the well-to-do part of Mexico City. Like the Louis Vuitton shops and everything, where there's like gangs, criminals who were like outside in Polanco, like studying, looking for like designer lenses. These are not designer lenses, but looking for, I have no idea, whatever the Prada or something, Prada glasses or sunglasses, and they can figure out who has money or their watches. He was also telling me, Luis is the friend, designer watches, the criminals who are very good have studied, they know what the latest trends or whatever on these jewelry items are. And they're out looking for people who are wearing those items of jewelry on them. And they will get robbed. So again, no flashy jewelry probably anywhere in Latin America and in Mexico as well. So beware of your surroundings. That seems pretty obvious. Trust your guts. If it's not feeling right, probably get out. Sometimes maybe be better to go with a local. Definitely you can turn the situation into a better one, essentially. Driving at night. Generally don't drive at night, especially in like highways. There's even like the toll highways. Even though there's like military and stuff on the highways, you don't drive at night. So you definitely want to get to your destination beforehand and everything and plan around that. If you are held up at gunpoint, so this is probably your biggest risk is robbery. Just walking on the street or in a taxi or something, you may get robbed. That's the way it is. That's probably like all of Latin America. And if that happens to you, that's probably the worst thing that'll happen to you, because there are worse things, of course. But essentially, if you're held up at gunpoint, the rule is you never fight back, right? You don't want to be a hero. You're not Batman, Superman, or Bruce Lee or whatever. Don't fight back, right? Give them your stuff. Live tomorrow, right? But you never know. I've heard, not with foreigners particularly, but essentially, you don't know if that person could be on drugs or something. Give them your stuff, move on with your day. Lick your wounds and all good. But a good tactic that I use personally sometimes is to carry a second cell phone, some cheap whatever cell phone I don't actually use, with me, or a second wallet. Essentially, you carry the second wallet with some cash in there and some like expired credit cards. You get held up or something, right? Again, you give them the wallet with little money and the cheap cell phone, and you keep your iPhone or whatever. That could work. So come to the end here. I'm about 4 minutes over my hour scheduled time for this live Facebook webinar. So I appreciate everybody coming. So I do have some free e-guides to download. One is how to move to Mexico. Has some of this much information I talked about and much, much more, with like links of consulates, visa applications, a whole bunch of information, about 75 pages, videos, other bloggers, a lot of great information. The other one as well is if you're already living in Mexico, how to get like an apartment, what to look out for, places to rent apartments or buy as well. A lot of great information. And then lastly, I do have under developments right now an upcoming Mexican residency visa guide that will give you instant answers to figure out what visa options that you may qualify for. So simple, easy, you click yes, no, and I'll tell you, what kind of visa that you could get. And then also there's some additional information you can get to speed up that process as well. So I'll announce that in the Facebook group when it's ready. So again, I thank you. My name is Adam Race, the creator of In Mexico We Go. I'll be having more of these in the future. Appreciate you for watching. Hope you learned something. Hopefully you're enjoying the Facebook group. As it's building and growing, I'm trying to work hard to give everybody quality information. Got some other stuff rolling out here shortly. So gracias por su tiempo. Thank you very much, and I'll see you around Facebook. Ciao.